You've probably done it 1,000 times. You type Docker run into your terminal, hit enter, and poof, a whole application just springs to life in seconds. It honestly feels like magic, right? But what is actually going on under the hood? Well, let's pull back the curtain and trace the incredible journey your command takes from just a simple line of text to a fully running, isolated container. So we're going to follow this command right here. It's probably one of the most common ones out there. Think of this single line as the hero of our story. It kicks off this fascinating, hidden chain of events. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see the intricate dance of components that makes this simple command so incredibly powerful. Okay, so here's our roadmap for the journey. It all starts with the client. That's you typing in the terminal. That command gets handed off to the daemon, which then grabs an image to build a container, and finally it launches the main process. We're going to break down each of these 5 stages one by one. First up, the initial handoff. Now, here's something you might not realize. When you type Docker run, you're not talking directly to the Docker engine. Nope, you're actually talking to a middleman, the Docker client. So the client's job is to take your commands, the port mappings, the image name, all of it, and translate it into a language the Docker engine understands. It packages it all up into a nice, neat API request. Then it sends that request over to the real workhorse, the Docker daemon, using this special high-speed phone line on your system called the Docker socket. All right, the daemon has received its instructions. Its first order of business, it needs to find the blueprint for our container. And that blueprint, of course, is the container image. In our case, the daemon is now on the hunt for that ngx image. Now, the daemon is smart. It's efficient. Before it goes scouring the internet, it checks its own backyard first. Does it already have a copy of the ngx image on this machine? It's kind of like checking your own pantry for an ingredient before you make a trip to the grocery store. And if that image isn't local, well, then the daemon goes shopping. It reaches out to a registry, usually Docker Hub, and first it downloads something called the image manifest. Think of the manifest as the recipe. Then it follows that recipe and starts pulling down all the ingredients, the image layers. This is a super important concept. Images aren't one giant file. They're a stack of separate, reusable pieces layered on top of each other. So, with the blueprint in hand and all the layers downloaded, the daemon is finally ready to start construction. It's time to build the actual container, that isolated little box where our application will live. And this is where the design gets really elegant. The daemon takes all those read-only image layers we just talked about and stacks them up. Then, right on the very top, it adds a single, brand new, writable layer. It's like putting a clear plastic sheet over a painting. You can draw all over the plastic, but the original painting underneath remains untouched. This whole thing is made possible by clever tech, like storage drivers, most commonly one called Overlay 2. Next up, our container needs a way to talk to the outside world. So by default, Docker creates what you can think of as a magical Ethernet cable. One end gets plugged into our new container, becoming its ETH0 network card. The other end gets plugged into the host machine's virtual network bridge. And finally, Docker sets up some firewall rules to forward any traffic coming into the host on port 80 directly to our container's port 80, just like we asked it to in the original command. Okay, so we've got a file system, we've got networking, but how does a container really become its own isolated sandboxed little world? This, my friends, is where the real magic of the Linux kernel comes into play, thanks to 2 incredibly powerful features, namespaces and cgroups. Namespaces basically create a virtual bubble for the container. They trick the process inside into thinking it has the entire computer all to itself. You've got different types for different things. For example, the PID namespace gives the container its own set of process IDs. So the main process inside thinks it's PID 1, the most important process on the system. The net namespace gives it its own private network, and the MNT namespace gives it its own private view of the file system. It's like giving it its own little universe. So if namespaces build the walls of the container's private room, cgroups, or control groups, decide how big that room is. They're basically the resource police. Cgroups make sure our NGX container can't go rogue and gobble up all the host's CPU or memory. They enforce the limits, which is absolutely crucial for keeping the whole system stable. So the entire environment is now prepped. The stage is perfectly set. But the Docker daemon, you can think of it as a high-level manager, doesn't like to get its hands dirty with the final step. Instead, it delegates the actual launch to a team of specialists. And this handoff happens in a very specific chain of command. The Docker daemon passes the request to a component called containerd, which is a supervisor that handles the container's lifecycle. Then containerd calls on a low-level tool called runc to do the actual work of creating the process. This separation of duties is really key to how the modern container world works. And here it is, the moment of creation. Runc makes a special request to the Linux kernel called a clone system call. It basically tells the kernel, hey, create a new process for me, but make sure you put it inside all of those namespaces we just set up. And that new process, the Nginx server in our case, becomes the legendary PID1 inside its very own isolated world. The container is officially alive. And there we have it. Our Nginx container is up and running, happily serving traffic, completely walled off from the host and any other containers. But, believe it or not, the Docker daemon's job still isn't quite done. Now, if you remember one thing, make it this. This is probably the most important rule in all of containerland. The container's entire existence is tied to that main process, our PID1. The very second that the Nginx process inside the container stops, for any reason at all, the container's job is done, and the container itself stops. It's as simple as that. So while the container is running, the Docker engine is still in the background, acting like a diligent supervisor. It's capturing all the output and logs from our Nginx process. It's managing any health checks you might have set up, and it's ready to enforce any restart policies if that container ever fails. It's always keeping an eye on things. So let's wrap all of that into a quick summary. If you're ever in an interview and someone asks you to explain Docker run, here's your cheat sheet. The client tells the daemon what to do. The daemon gets the image, builds the file system with a writable layer on top of read-only layers, and then uses Linux namespaces and cgroups to build an isolated box. It then hands off to containerd and run, which start the main process as PID1 inside that box. From then on, Docker just manages the logs and lifecycle. See, every step just flows right into the next. So from a single command, we've kicked off this incredible complex dance. The container is now running, a tiny, self-contained universe of its own. But its story is really just getting started. What about interacting with it using Docker exec, or figuring out how these images get made in the first place with Docker build? The journey of really understanding containers is just beginning.